What's up, guys? It's Iron Fist here with another one of my What If series. Then this episode, as you can see in the title, our topic today is Aaron Rodgers. So like I do in all of these videos, even though he's been around a long time and most of you know his history, we're still going to take it on back to the very beginning. Aaron Rodgers played college football at the University of California for 2 seasons, both his sophomore and his junior year. In those seasons, he was able to rack up 424 completions on his 665 attempts, giving him a 63.8 completion percentage, 5,469 passing yards, 43 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, with a 150.3 passer efficiency rating. He was also able to rush 160 times for 336 yards, giving him a 2.1 average yards per carry and 8 rushing touchdowns as well. Overall, he had a total of 5,815 yards and 51 touchdowns. Also to be noted, he did have 1 reception for 10 yards, and that didn't impact his total yards. Aaron Rodgers was then drafted in the 2005 NFL Draft, Round 1, pick 24 by the Green Bay Packers. He was drafted to ultimately become the successor of Brett Favre, but he had a few years to sit behind him and learn. And now, 12 years, 1 Super Bowl ring, and 2 MVPs later, that brings us to this year's 2017-2018 season, where Aaron Rodgers was being his normal self and being one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. That is until Week 6 versus the Minnesota Vikings. He was placed on injured reserve after breaking his collarbone from a big hit from Anthony Barr. This caused Aaron Rodgers to miss 8 weeks. He only returned in Week 15 just because the Packers' playoff hopes were still alive. Unfortunately, they lost that game, so he went ahead and sat out Week 16 and 17. That being said, here's a look of how he did in those games he actually participated in this year. In Week 1 versus the Seattle Seahawks, they won the game 17-9. He was 28 of 42 with a 66.7 completion percentage. He had 311 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, giving him an 86.5 passer rating. In Week 2 in the NFC Championship rematch versus the Atlanta Falcons, they did lose their game 23-34. He was 33 of 50 with a 66 completion percentage, throwing for 343 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, giving him a 90.7 passer rating. In Week 3 versus the Cincinnati Bengals, they won the game 27-24, where he was 28 of 42, giving him a 66.7 completion percentage again, with 313 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, with a 102.6 passer rating. Week 4 versus the Chicago Bears, they won their game 35-14. He was 18 of 26 with a 69.2 completion percentage, 179 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, with a 128 passer rating. In Week 5 versus the Dallas Cowboys, they won their game 35-31. He was 19 of 29, 65.5 completion percentage for 221 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, with a 122.9 passer rating. In Week 6, unfortunately, this is where he broke his collarbone. They did lose their game 10-23. He was 2 out of 4 pass attempts, 50% completion percentage, only 18 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, with a 62.5 passer rating. In the game, he decided to return to try and keep the Packers' hopes alive in Week 15 versus the Panthers. They did lose that game 24-31. He was 26 of 45 with a 57.8 completion percentage, 290 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, but 3 interceptions with a 71.5 passer rating. You could argue that he wasn't fully 100% in this game. That being said, not being 100% and still throwing 290 yards and 3 touchdowns, I'd take his whatever percent he was at any day over a lot of the quarterbacks in this league's 100%. Which leads us to what this video is actually about. As you could see in the title, what if Aaron Rodgers never got injured? Now here's where I typically hop over to Madden to go ahead and simulate to see what the record might have been had he never gotten injured, but I have something extra in this video that I'd like your guys' opinion on. I thought it'd be fun to throw in, so here it is. What was Aaron Rodgers' MVP chances if he never got injured? So, based on his 7 games, we're going to go ahead and exclude the Vikings game, the one he got injured in, and use the other 6 on his averages per game. Per game of those 6 games, he was averaging a 65.3 completion percentage, 276.1 yards per game, 100.3 quarterback rating, 2.6 touchdowns a game, and 1 interception a game. Now, where we had 6 games, there's a total of 16 that every team plays. All we need to do is take his averages and times them by 10 to give you what his total would have been for those 10 games that he did not get to play in, and then add that to his stats that he was able to accumulate, which brought us this. Here you can see I have Tom Brady here because right now it looks like he's going to win the MVP, although there's a good argument for Todd Gurley, one I actually like. I would love to see Todd Gurley win the MVP, but the general consensus is that Tom Brady is going to win the MVP this year. Tom Brady had 4,577 passing yards, 32 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 66.3 completion percentage, and 102.8 passer rating. Now, if Aaron Rodgers was able to maintain the pace that he was going, that would have put him at having 4,418 yards, 42 touchdowns, 16 interceptions with a 65.3 completion percentage, and 100.3 quarterback rating. Now, these numbers are very similar. Tom Brady only had about 160 more passing yards. Aaron Rodgers had 10 more touchdowns, but also had 8 more interceptions. Tom Brady had a 1% better passing completion percentage and also had 2.5 points better of a passer rating. So this really comes down as to whether the MVP candidates would have went more towards all-around stats or relied heavily on a lot more touchdowns and very similar stats. So it really depends. If we're going off all-around, even though it's barely, Tom Brady does look like he had a slightly better year than what Aaron Rodgers would have had he not gotten injured. That being said, 42 touchdowns as opposed to 32 and only having 8 more interceptions, that's not bad either, especially when you're barely behind in the other stats. That's a pretty good argument. Ultimately, it would come down to how good of a season that Aaron Rodgers was able to give the Packers, because where the Patriots went 13-3, at this point, Aaron Rodgers with those 6 games, he went 4-2. So if they were able to win out and go 14-2, that could have possibly leaned it in his favor. If he would have been 13-3 or even 12-4, he still could have had a good argument. But once you start getting down a little bit lower, then it could have leaned the odds a little more in Tom Brady's favor at that point. But I want to hear your guys' opinions on this. Make sure to leave a comment below and let me know what you guys think. If Aaron Rodgers was able to maintain those stats and had these stats you see here, do you think he would have won the MVP, or do you think Tom Brady still would have had it? Make sure to leave a comment below on that. So here's the part where we hop over to Madden. Now what I did is, instead of just simulating the full season, I went ahead and granted the wins and losses for the games that he actually did participate in. So you will see I clicked and I forced the home win and so on for each one of these games. So forced home here because they lost to the Falcons. Then they beat the Bengals, beat the Bears, beat the Cowboys, and then down here in Week 15, they lost to the Panthers. Those are the only games where I actually set the record. Those will be the exact same as for the other 10 games, including the Vikings game. Those will be simulated, and let's see based on Madden what it thinks the Packers season would have ended up looking like had Aaron Rodgers never gotten hurt. So we're going to go over here and go ahead and simulate until the playoffs and see what it looks like. Alright, now that we're at the end of the season, it looks like they would have made the playoffs. It has them going 10-5-1. So essentially you could say 11-5 or 10-6. Probably more likely 11-5. As I'm watching these little icons down on the bottom left, it looks like Aaron Rodgers actually won the MVP. So let's go take a look at that. Yeah, so it showed he had 5,267 passing yards, which was first in the NFL. 48 passing touchdowns, which looked like first in the NFL, and 105.7 passer rating, which 11th in the NFL. So very good chance. Probably not those numbers based on how the season went this year. The defenses were a lot better, so it's not quite as high passing yards for everyone, considering Tom Brady led with 4,500. But you never know. He could have absolutely blown it away and pulled off those numbers. So let's go ahead and take a look and see how it had their games lining up. So it had them winning Week 1. All these here I already had set all the way there. It had them winning in a close shootout versus the Vikings, 42-38. It had them beating the Saints in another close game, 38-35. Had them beating the Lions, 35-31. Beating the Bears, 28-25. Had them losing to the Ravens in an absolute blowout, 18-44. Had them losing to the Steelers in a close game, 34-38. Had them beating the Buccaneers, which I believe they did this year anyway. It also has them beating the Browns, which we all know they did because the Browns didn't win a game. Now, I made them lose to the Panthers because that was a game he came back and did lose. Has them tying the Vikings in their second go-around, 21-all, which, I mean, I guess is very possible. The Vikings just lost in the NFC Championship, so very, very possible that could go either way. And it has them losing in a blowout to the Lions. I don't know if that would have happened, but we never really know. That being said, has them going 10-5-1 and making the playoffs, and I believe that was enough to win their division. No, they lost their division to the Vikings. So, again, Very, very possible. So, because the Vikings ran away with that division this year, you could easily argue, though, that was highly because Aaron Rodgers did go down. Not to take away from what the Vikings have been able to pull off this season. Case Keenum has been absolutely amazing, but it would have been a lot more interesting race had Aaron Rodgers never gotten injured, as you can see here with this simulation. So let's go ahead and take a look at see who it had making the playoffs. So it has the Chargers and the Chiefs, the Rams and the Falcons, the Patriots and the Texans, and the Packers and the Seahawks. So let's go ahead and simulate and see how the playoffs would have ended up had this been the scenario that actually happened. We're going to go ahead and advance to the Super Bowl, and then we'll go back and see how it lined up. Looks like it has a Super Bowl rematch with the Falcons and the Patriots again. And then in the conference, looks like, wow, the Seahawks, looks like they lost to the Seahawks in the wild card round. Which, like I said, this is all fictional and basically speculation on how that could have actually lined up. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to leave a comment below of how you guys think the season would have lined up had Aaron Rodgers never got injured. And make sure to leave comments below of video topics you'd like me to do in the future in these scenarios. As always, I appreciate all the support that you guys have given me on these. Make sure to leave all the feedback you can as possible. If you're new, be sure to subscribe and drop a like below as well. Thank you guys for watching, and I'm out. Bye.